Every Sunday, the Titans of weather bring the rain. Geek Out, Sundays at noon on the Weather Channel.
Welcome back to Weather Center Live. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow in Hamburg, New York. We've been embedded with the suburb shovel crew. It just rolls off the tongue easily. And so we have Gina, we have Naomi, we have Sean. We've done at least 3 homes today. What's the plan of action as you move forward through this afternoon?
Well, we're just going to keep going. We have a dispatch crew, I guess, kind of in front of the computer screens and keeping up on some threads on the event page and letting us know, who needs to be done. And it's just sort of on a case-by-case basis, call people what's going on. We're clearing paths from the road to the street. If you need food or medications, or we can run to the store for something for you, that's about it. The rest is a first responder scenario.
Fantastic. All volunteers again. Thanks to all you guys and good luck.
Thanks,
fantastic. Just one of several social media groups that got together to help people in need here in Western New York. And Jen, the last thing they want to know is if there's more snow on the way. But unfortunately there is. We don't expect as much as we got last week, but you got more here at our winter weather update.
Yeah, we've got a couple clippers coming through that area, Paul, which is one thing that will affect Thanksgiving travel. Busy couple of days ahead, and we've got some busy weather. I'm actually going to start looking at thunderstorms in the Seattle, Washington area. So interesting to me that, how many pieces of a puzzle have to come together to get one big storm to develop. And the headline has been a big storm that could develop off the eastern seaboard on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And believe it or not, this active weather that we see right here, these thunderstorms in south of Olympia, Washington, are actually part of that puzzle piece. That's some of the energy that has to track across the nation and get there to the eastern seaboard to help drive the formation of this next storm system. That's why it's so complicated. Just so much going on in our atmosphere and so much has to come together. Today we've been watching the southeast for thunderstorms. Again, another piece to the puzzle. This front that we're tracking through the southeast, and out ahead of it where we're seeing the thunderstorms, this front moves to the southeast and actually stalls off the coast. That's another piece of the puzzle that we're tracking. Low pressure really bottoms out up here across the upper Midwest, the northern Great Lakes, northern Michigan. We're going to be watching that help drive back in some colder air to the upper Midwest. Again, all pieces of the puzzle to help drive this next storm system off the eastern seaboard. Now, for you in the upper Midwest, in Minnesota, also especially into lower Wisconsin, eastern Iowa, northern Illinois, we're going to be looking at big changes coming overnight tonight as those northerly winds blow in the cold air and we see snow coming in for tomorrow morning. Again, watching across northern Illinois into southern Wisconsin. Then on Wednesday, another clipper comes through. That's going to come through the Midwest. Buffalo, I'd say heads up for you on that one. Windy conditions, maybe a little bit of snow, not what we just saw. But also at the same time, we're going to be watching what's happening off the eastern seaboard of the U.S. Area of low pressure forming. The track of the low makes all the difference as to what we get here into the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. But let me just show you quickly 2 models. The American model tracks it up along the coast, brings in the 32-degree line, the cold air. Behind it, we've got snow. It would be a heavy, wet kind of snow that we'd be looking at, and potentially all the way down even into New York City. Then the European model, want to show you this track as well. Again, these are our 2 favorite models, but not the only solutions. This one tracks a little closer to the coast, has a little more moisture to deal with. But as we look at this Wednesday, before Thanksgiving, we see snow, Interstate 81 to be affected, and we will see that continuing to climb Wednesday night up into New England. So potentially big impacts. Want to make sure you come back for updates on this East Coast storm the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Bonnie.
Absolutely, Jen. That's something to watch for certain. We're also keeping a close watch on severe weather that's working its way into the panhandle of Florida right now. Very strong thunderstorms. You can see on the radar that we have a lot of rain coming into Pensacola at this hour. Heavy downpours as well, spottier showers and storms working their way into Montgomery. So keep that in mind if you're traveling, that unfortunately this weather could go from bad to worse. We've had reports of very strong winds with this system at about 50 miles per hour, and of course that could down trees. Looking at the severe thunderstorm threat for today, it stretches well into the other coast of Florida, all the way to the east. We're also seeing that into South Carolina as well, southern Georgia, central Alabama. We could see isolated tornadoes. And when we're looking at the Torcon for today, the number is all the way to number 5. That means 5 in a 10 chance through 5 o'clock for the cities that you see above here. Well, weather geeks, they are taking on the buzzword of 2014.
Currently in our area, 81 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Today, scattered showers or thunderstorms. High 82. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, some clouds. Chance of a shower or thunderstorm through the evening. Low 74. Monday, partly cloudy skies. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 86. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Polar vortex. It sounds more like a Nicolas Cage movie, doesn't it? Sound like, we gotta get out of this vortex. The dollar bill has a polar bear on it.
We're experiencing what's called a polar vortex. Polar vortex. Polar vortex. Kick it. Ha!
Maybe a roller coaster or a brand of aftershave or a new term for a brain freeze.
A lesser meteorologist could have overreached with Arctic coldnado.
But if you was on the plate, I would microwave you. You are so cold. Does that sound like something you see on the cover of Cosmo? Try the polar vortex.
We say to the polar vortex, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Don't let it hit you where the good Lord split you.
Exactly. All right, Thank you for adding that twist, Al. I appreciate it.
And welcome to Weather Geeks. And you know we had to do it. You've heard it, the polar vortex. This is the episode. I'm joined today by Dr. Greg Postel, storm specialist here at the Weather Channel, and also Professor Andrea Lang from SUNY at Albany. Thank you both for joining me today. Now, we just saw of that, the polar vortex. It's on the late night shows. It's in the scientific jargon. How did we get here? Greg, how did we get here?
Well, apparently it started, this media hype started about, a year ago, roughly, when it got really, really cold in January. And some very prolific media outlets started, talking about the polar vortex, and it kind of spun out of control very quickly. In fact, I think I was part of that whole project, because I remember.
So it's you.
Yeah, I was right there leading the train, I guess, right? I was on the A train. But yeah, the polar vortex I said, yeah, during one of those cold outbreaks last year, I said, there's a filament or a piece of the polar vortex that's going to be visiting us. And, from there, a lot of other media outlets caught on, and it took on a life of its own.
Yeah, and the social media certainly had a role in that as well, with all of the blogs out there. From the academic side, what was your take as we started to hear all of this polar vortex? It's coming to get us.
It's been really interesting because it's one of the things that you learn about. It exists. We get cold temperatures over the North Pole in the wintertime. We stay warmer in the warmer latitudes, mid-latitude regions. Sure. And so all of a sudden we get a vortex over the pole.
So it's kind of always there, particularly in the cold season.
Especially in the winter.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, when you hear the polar vortex is attacking Chicago,
Sounds bad.
Yeah, it's not quite what we think of in academia, but it's definitely something that, now people know about it, so I'm really excited to actually talk about what it really is.
Yeah, and a little later in the show, we'll get into sort of really the science, the meteorology behind it. But, Greg, this happened. You're in this business. You know that there are terms that kind of come about and kind of take a life of their own. Derecho, we've seen it with El Nino, bombogenesis. What drives this phenomenon, particularly things like the polar vortex catching on?
Well, there's part of the media that wants to grab a hold of something and get more recognition or some credibility associated with that. And so I think, if you can latch on to in this world of Twitter, 140 character, method of communication, if you can grab onto something like that, a phrase or something like that, and all of a sudden you get a lot of exposure, that's why people gravitate that way. And the problem for science is that when you do that, you remove the context from which these definitions are supposed to be enshrouded in. So it's very problematic.
Well, let's talk about definition. The American Meteorological Society has the glossary of the AMS out there, and you've actually been involved in some efforts to update the definition. I know back around January, I saw a very old definition, but it has been updated. Tell us about that.
That old definition is old. It's from the 40s and 50s.
So it's right. We didn't invent it. I know there were some talk show hosts that said it was invented by some scientists for an agenda on climate and other things. It's been around since the 40s.
No, it's been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
And, the media has caught on, and so we're trying to update it to make sure that it's very clear what it is from a scientific perspective, but also to have it be understandable to everybody else.
Right, and so that's the fine line that I think, Greg, we have to draw. Yes, it has been sort of hyperbole and hysteria, but there really is some science benefit in terms of educating. I remember one time you and Jim Cantori on air talking about, okay, we got lost in the discussion of it, but really it does have an impact, whatever it is we're talking about.
Yeah, it does, and maybe we're just raising awareness in kind of an awkward way, where there's this push toward hysteria, on one side of it, and then people want to know what it is, and then the understanding of what it really is gets lost, and then I think there's actually kind of a backlash which happens where you have people who talk about it, and then there are people who say, oh no, that's just hysteria, and remove themselves entirely from the phenomenon, say, oh, there's nothing to do here, it doesn't exist, and then you're going through this rubber band effect where you're maybe too far on one side, on the hysteria side, and then too far on the other side, denying its existence.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I think we see that in many areas within our field. Some true or false questions. The polar vortex, is it also at the South Pole as well?
There is a polar vortex over the South Pole. It's not as wavy as it is in the northern hemisphere, but yeah, it exists in the southern hemisphere winter as well.
Greg, we often hear polar vortex, we hear circumpolar vortex. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, really, the polar vortex is basically an area of a cold pool that hangs out over the poles because you don't get much heating, obviously, in the wintertime in the northern hemisphere or in the southern hemisphere. And because of that, you get a westerly wind that circumvents that or circulates around that cold pool. And that is the vortex itself. It has a myriad of shapes and sizes and configurations, and it doesn't always look like what people think of. Aha, that's a vortex, that's a donut of a vortex. Sometimes it looks completely unlike what you may traditionally think of a vortex looking like.
Right, and I mean, and after the break, we've got some amazing Meteorology 101 that I think we're going to have some fun with, just breaking it down. I guarantee you by the end of this show, you will be an expert, even if you're not a meteorologist, in understanding what the polar vortex is. I've even heard I heard from an astronomy colleague that other planets may have something like a polar vortex. So the physics is basically the same, right?
Yeah. All you need is temperature contrast over a hemisphere, and if you have those temperature contrasts, the winds have to change with height, so you're going to get this circumpolar circulation.
Right. So so it's interesting. It's amazing how not only our atmosphere works, but other atmospheres as well. And so we are really going to get more into the meteorologists. I really encourage people to stick around for this because this is great. I'm really geeked out about it, as you can tell, because we've got some amazing graphics that we're going to come up with. The science of the polar vortex. That's coming up in our next segment. Really excited about this. But before we go to the science in our next break, I want to introduce our Geek of the Week, Andrew Friedman. Andrew Friedman is a senior climate reporter from Mashable. Prior to working at Mashable, Friedman was a senior science writer for Climate Central. He holds a master's in climate and society from Columbia University. And his favorite non-weather hobby is watching and performing sketch comedy. Andrew grew up near Boston. He loves snowstorms, and his favorite weather term, go figure, bombogenesis.
How could switchgrass in Argentina change engineering in Dubai, aluminum production in South Africa, and the aerospace industry in the U.S.? At T. Rowe Price, we understand the connections of a complex global economy. It's just one reason over 70% of our mutual funds beat their 10-year Lipper average. T. Rowe Price. Invest with confidence. Request a prospectus or summary prospectus with investment information, risks, fees, and expenses to read and consider carefully before investing. Nourished. Rescued. Protected.
given new hope. During the Subaru Share the Love event, Subaru owners feel it too. Because when you take home a new Subaru, we donate $250 to helping those in need. We'll have given $50 million over 7 years. Love, it's what makes a Subaru.
In the 60s, your father was convinced that the U.S. could launch an interstellar spaceship.
Ascension is a lifeboat for humanity, taking with it mankind's hope for survival.
Ascension, a 3-night event, limited commercial premiere, only on Sci-Fi.
Currently in our area, 81 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Today, scattered showers or thunderstorms. High 82. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, some clouds. Chance of a shower or thunderstorm through the evening. Low 74. Monday, partly cloudy skies. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 86. Here's our 7-day outlook.
CNBC Wednesday nights, we're wheeling and dealing with Shark Tank at 8 and 9 Eastern and the Car Chasers at 10 on the fastest growing network in prime time, CNBC.
Let's get a head start on the holidays. Let's open something before Christmas. Not that. Those. And of course, a whole lot of these. Let's make merry, along with a few other things. Deck out that. Save all these and spread more of this. That's how to holiday. Let's do this. More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot.
Get 100 count clear or multicolor incandescent lights for just $1.88.
Get fast-acting, long-lasting relief from heartburn with doctor-recommended Gaviscon. It neutralizes stomach acid and is the only product that forms a protective barrier that helps keep stomach acid in the stomach where it belongs. For fast-acting, long-lasting relief, try Gaviscon.
For the year. Hi, sorry, just want to say I bundled home an auto with State Farm, saved $760. Love this guy. So.
Okay, does it bother anybody else that the mime is talking? Freaky.
Savings worth talking about. State Farm.
Sir, we're gonna need you on the runway.
Theraflu starts to get to work in your body in just 5 minutes. Theraflu breaks you free from your worst cold and flu symptoms. Theraflu, serious power.
Pro, it's a phenomenon that signals a return to colder temperatures across North America. Connor, as it used to be called, the month of November. That's what happens. It gets cold, people. Sorry.
It gets cold during the winter.
It really does.
And welcome back to Weather Geeks. We're going to go to class right now. I'm going to ask Professor Andrea to talk us through, if she were sitting in a 101 class there at SUNY, what would you describe the polar vortex as? How would you teach it?
Well, the first thing we would start with is talking about the thermal wind, which essentially, if you have a warm column of air, and I'm talking about a whole deep column of air, because it's warmer, it's less dense, so it's a little bit thicker and taller than a cold column of air. And so during the winter, you get this difference from the poles, cold columns, short columns, to the equator where you get tall columns. And because of that, you get this pressure gradient that creates winds that go westerly.
Pressure gradients, so for those that are not the Weather Geeks, the differences in pressure.
Exactly, because you have differences in densities as you go from the equator to the north.
Absolutely. Now, Greg, we heard terms like thermal wind and gradients. So this creates, and it's really certain times of the year that it's really stronger. So how does these differences in pressure and these sort of differences in temperature manifest themselves in this belt of really strong winds circling the pole?
Well, in a rotating planet, rotating geophysical fluid like we have,
Yes.
when you have density differences, as Andrea was explaining, the response in the atmosphere is to try to adjust to that, and then you end up getting a Coriolis torque on this attempt to create this balance between the differences in warm and cold places, and you get a wind out of the west when you have it cold to the north. So I remember the first thing that what I was taught in Meteorology 101 was that you have the westerly jet stream because it's cold to the poles. That's in the northern hemisphere, of course, opposite in the southern hemisphere. So where it's colder in the northern latitudes, just surrounding that very cold air, you have the westerlies thanks to the thermal wind shear vector associated with what she was describing.
Right, yeah, and so it really is that, we've got this jet stream pattern, which many people, I think, in meteorology are very familiar with. I tell people if they're over 40 like me, think about a waterbed. If they're under 40, think about an inflatable that a child bounces on. And, the atmosphere has these undulations. You push down in one place and another part comes up. And this really, I've heard sort of the analogies that when we have a weak polar vortex, that's when we can get intrusions of cold air, or more likely to.
Yeah, so if you have a weak polar vortex, the temperature differences between the equator and the poles is much weaker on average. If you average every latitude band, you get this weaker pole to equator temperature gradient. But what that means locally is that you can have cold air further south than it normally is and warm air further north than it normally is.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, these westerlies, it's exactly what she was describing. These westerlies that circulate around the pole near the tropopause, they're very wavy because we have instabilities in those jet stream winds.
And I believe right now, while you're talking, I think they actually may have up the polar vortex from November 23rd or so.
Yeah, I mean, the thing has broken down, and what these sort of extrusions, these north-south extrusions, are associated with those developing eddies in this jet stream. Right. And that is associated with a weaker than average boundary to the polar vortex, because what that's telling you is that you no longer have this rigid perimeter of it. It's been broken into wavy pieces, and what was once a semi-permeable barrier to lateral or latitudinal transport has been broken down, and air parcels are going from the tropics very far north and vice versa.
Yeah, and so we get these cold intrusions, and if that wasn't geeky enough, we're going to come back and talk about the recent lake effect snows that we saw earlier this week. Really enjoying the show, and we're going to geek out some more in the next block on the big lake effect snows, things like I've never seen before in the career as a meteorologist.
Average women's tees versus a gawking gopher. Duluth Trading Longtail tees versus a gawking gopher. The Duluth Longtail tee. 2 extra inches to defend your back end. Get one. Only at DuluthTrading.com.
Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
You're covered, Kevin. Blah, blah, insurance. Person, come help.
Hey, Grandma. 6 callers ahead of us, Jimmy.
Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. There to help you get to a better state.
At Pep Boys, we've got big holiday deals going on right now. Like a Touring 2-ton jack for only $10, or an electric Razor scooter for just $99. And when you buy 3 select tires, you get the 4th free instantly. Trust the boys to get you there.
Attention, because winning Black Friday actually starts Thursday at 6 p.m. with the 1-hour guarantee.
Get top gifts at low prices guaranteed in time for Christmas, plus hundreds more items at Black Friday prices.
Then at 8 p.m., even more items unlock at crazy low prices. And it's still Thursday.
Then on Friday, between 6 a.m. and 12 p.m., get 30% off select items from top brands and departments.
Black Friday on Friday? Crazy.
So get to Walmart on Thursday.
And just never leave.
Black Friday starts Thursday at 6 p.m. Plan yours at Walmart.com.
It's just freaking me out.
If you missed tonight on the Weather Channel,
this is crazy.
You'll never know how twisted weather can be.
Is it real? Yeah, it's real.
Wicked.
Mom and Dad told us they had just made their funeral and burial prearrangements. We thought they already had taken care of that. When we learned it was through Beth Israel and Eternal Light, we knew everything would be handled in the most caring and professional way. We realized it would be one of the most difficult days of our lives. It inspired my husband and me to make our own prearrangements so the burden wouldn't fall on our children when that day comes. It's not an easy thing to think about, but I'm so glad we did.
Get instant access to the hottest new releases with Xfinity On Demand. Get caught up in the thrilling disaster movie, Into the Storm.
I study storms all my life, and this one is bigger than any storm that has ever been.
We gotta get out of here.
Let's go! Oh my God, are you seeing this?
Own or rent Into the Storm anytime. Instantly access your favorite movies by going to Xfinity On Demand and visiting the movies section. Own or rent your favorites with Xfinity On Demand.
Ready for a new breed of broker? There's a name for people like you. Trade King. Switch today.
CNBC Wednesday nights, we're wheeling and dealing with Shark Tank at 8 and 9 Eastern and the Car Chasers at 10 on the fastest growing network in prime time, CNBC.
Currently in our area, 82 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Today, scattered showers or thunderstorms. High 82. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, some clouds. Chance of a shower or thunderstorm through the evening. Low 74. Monday, partly cloudy skies. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 86. Here's our 7-day outlook.
And welcome back. You know what time it is on Weather Geeks. We're going to geek out. And as you've seen earlier this week, just tremendous snow totals from lake effect snow in the Great Lakes region, Western New York. I joked, I said, you know, Western New York sent a letter to Atlanta and said, this is what it means to be snowed in, not 1 inch. So, yeah. Greg, just tell us about some of the things we're seeing here. I mean, we're seeing this wall, this wedge. It's just amazing.
Yeah, well, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I obviously don't live in the lee of the lakes, but I've seen enough over my career to recognize that this event that we're dealing with now is on the very high end of the lake effect snow events that we've seen in recent decades. I mean, the fact that there was so much instability over because the air aloft was so cold in association with a filament of the polar vortex coming down over the Great Lakes.
You worked it in.
Right? Gotta work it in, man. So what's happening?
That's a geek gold star right there.
So we have this temperature contrast, right? At 5,000 feet, the temperature was about 0 Fahrenheit over the lakes, and the water temperature was at 50. That means we have capes in the lower troposphere of about 1,500 joules per kilogram, which unleashed the snow downstream.
Yeah, and we're seeing some of the radar. I mean, it's just one of the other interesting things about lake effect snow is if you've got a fetch that's over the sort of long-wise section of the lake, that's really an optimal setup for snow. Well, what would you say about that? You're in New York. You guys deal with this quite often.
Well, I mean, especially when you have that long fetch over the lake, you can get the orientation of the wind so that the lake effect bands can actually reach eastern New York.
Yeah.
So this is an extreme event, and we had some flurries out of it over in Albany.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. People saw those very famous wedge pictures. You really had cloud base right at the lake surface.
Yeah, that was weird. It was almost like I was looking from the eye of a hurricane outside into the eye wall where the boundary layer is saturated. But what you're looking at actually is the cloud developing and the vertical transport of heat and moisture right in front of your eyes. And the snow, the heavy snow, is occurring just inside of that cloud bank.
And we're seeing some of it in some of these night aerial pictures of pilots flying in. I mean, that's an instant classic on Twitter and everywhere else. It's just an amazing event. Your fellow Wisconsinner, Dr. John Knox, kept referencing the aphid storm from a few years ago that he's been noticing. But just some of the images we're seeing here are just amazing. And it just really is an exciting time for meteorologists. But sadly, there were some loss of life there. And we're certainly cognizant of that. Now, as we close out the show, we've talked about the polar vortex. We've thrown some. What's the next word that's going to be the big star in the movie that we know about as meteorologists, but the media discovers?
All right, I'll go first.
Okay.
Since we're talking about the polar vortex, we've been talking about the tropospheric part of the polar vortex, but the stratospheric part of the polar vortex is what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, okay, so that's your...
Stratospheric sudden warming.
Stratospheric sudden warming. You heard it here. What about you, Greg? You agree with that? Or?
Sure, I think it's a good one. I like it. How about Arctic Oscillation?
Arctic Oscillation,
or NAO.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that's basically just a measure of how weird the circulation is, and when it's weird, oftentimes it's cold in places that it's not normally cold. So sometimes those numbers, AO, NAO, give us an idea that something weird is happening.
Well, I'm going to throw out there, I'm an old radar guy. You've got the new dual polarimetric radar out there. So we're going to start hearing things like correlation coefficient, debris balls. And we've heard some of these things, but I think they're gaining a bit more. So as we kind of close out, we've got about 30 seconds here. Any final words on the polar vortex? Is it coming to get us?
Well, we have to pay attention, and I think we have to pay attention to what's going on in the stratosphere. Okay. So there we go.
Okay, so stratosphere. Greg, any final thoughts from you?
It's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, as I mentioned in the very beginning of the show, it's something that you all kind of learn to appreciate what it is in the very early meteorology courses. And anytime you get an Arctic outbreak, it's probably got a tie to a filament of the polar vortex coming to an area near you.
So there we go. So we, Weather Geeks, we really try to bring the science home to everyone in a way that they can consume it and try to dispel myths where we can and bust those myths in our Hail No section. HAIL. And so with that, I think we're going to close it out as usual. Join us next week on Weather Geeks, and you can find us on Twitter at WXGeeks, TWC. And if you don't like Twitter, you can also find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page as well. And again, remember, the polar vortex is real, but stop polar vortex abuse for those of you that are using it in the wrong way. Weather Geeks next week.
From I wonder what it is to you'll never guess. Everything we sell at LL Bean is backed by the same rock-solid guarantee of satisfaction. So while they keep guessing what's inside, you can rest assured that they can always take it back or replace it. That's just how we're made. LL Bean, guaranteed to please.
Dad, I know I haven't said this often enough, but thank you.
Thank you, Mom, for protecting my future.
Thank you for being my hero and my dad.
Military families are uniquely thankful for many things. The legacy of USAA Auto Insurance could be one of them. If you're a current or former military member or their family, get an auto insurance quote and see why 92% of our members plan to stay for life.
Doing this all day, my feet and legs got really tired.
So I got Dr. Scholl's massaging gel work insoles.
They absorb the shock of working on my feet all day.
I feel energized. I'm a believer.
Dr. Scholl's massaging gel work insoles.
I'm a believer!
She was a good companion, eyes like the Grand Canyon. She was an American beauty. She was a long goodbye. She was the best I lived by. She was an American beauty. With her wayfarers on in the summer sun, her touch felt like a loaded gun. Wish I had held her long. Wish I had held her long.
Oh, I love game night. Oh, it's a house and a car.
So far, you're horrible at this, Flo.
You got no talent for drawing, Flo. House, car. Oh, raise the roof. No one?
Remember when we used to raise the roof, Diane?
Oh, quiet, Richard. I'm trying to make sense of Flo's terrible drawing.
I'll draw the pants off that thing.
Oh, hats on hamburgers. Dancing. Drive-in movie theater.
Home and auto.
Squares. Lamp.
Lines. Stupid, dumb.
No. Home and auto bundle from Progressive. Saves you money. Yay, game night. So much fun.
My son is going to wash the family Prius. He insisted on using the rain to save water. 14 years ago, I insisted on buying our first Prius. Because, like Toyota, we both know there's a way to do things, and a way to do things even better. The Prius. Toyota. Let's go places.
It's just freaking me out.
If you miss Tonight on the Weather Channel,
This is crazy.
you'll never know how twisted weather can be.
Is it real? Yeah, that's real.
Wicked Weather Sundays with strangest weather on Earth and American Supernatural. Tonight at 9, only on the Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 82 degrees under mostly cloudy skies. Today, scattered thunderstorms. High 82. Chance of rain 40%. Tonight, partly cloudy. Chance of a shower or thunderstorm through the evening. Low 74. Monday, partly cloudy skies. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 86. Here's our 7-day outlook.
CNBC Wednesday nights, we're wheeling and dealing with Shark Tank at 8 and 9 Eastern and the Car Chasers at 10 on the fastest growing network in prime time, CNBC.
I'm meteorologist Bonnie Schneider. We're tracking severe weather in Washington state where we have a tornado warning. It's just in effect for another 2 minutes. As we zoom into the region, you can see the severe weather that's rumbling through this area in Nassau. And this goes just for just a little bit longer for Pacific County. And it does include the city that you see here. So we're keeping a close watch on severe weather. Very gusty winds across Washington state for today, especially into Seattle as well. So this is one area of severe weather that we're keeping a watch on. But we're also tracking other areas that are facing a storm threat, and this happens to be in the south. We've been watching a lot of thunderstorms roll into Destin at this hour, Pensacola, and then further to the north. Unfortunately for Atlanta, more heavy rain is working its way through. So for those of you that are traveling, maybe you're getting a head start on your holiday travel, it's just going to be stormy for this region from Kentucky to South Carolina down through even central Florida. With the warm front lifting to the north, we'll be watching for these storms. Stay with the Weather Channel. We'll keep you up to date.
A freaky, seemingly everlasting storm rages in Venezuela. In Montana, mountains morph and grow. Strange circles of ice spin in Oregon.
Man, that is just amazing.
And miniature frozen rains fall in Oklahoma. Welcome to the wild world of weather, where you'll see nature go nuts. Extraordinary events, stranger than anything Hollywood can dream up. We discover how and why these crazy conditions happen.
Not going away.
Whoa! You won't believe your eyes. This is the strangest weather on Earth. Vinson, Oklahoma. If you think you've seen hail, think again. This is brain hail. It's mid-tornado season, 1995. Tornado trackers are trapped by a massive hailstorm. For storm chaser Kurt Kaplan, it was a day to remember.
It seems like it was yesterday. We were very fortunate to find a home and take cover underneath a tin shed. Please. We made it. And that's when the fireworks began with the hail. It's as big as it gets, people. You can hear it. It sounds like people taking glass bottles and crashing it on top of you with the way it was hitting on top of that shed. You can see the cattle were getting hit with this large hail, and they're trying to take cover. Poor animals are getting hit.
Kurt's blown away by the size of the huge hail.
Whoa! These things are softballs.
But when Kurt looks closer, he finds what looks like a frozen brain.
It was very circular, You can see little tiny pellets in there, and I've never seen anything like that. And it really looked like a brain.
The brain hail looks alien. But Karen Kosiba from the Center for Severe Weather Research says it's a unique window inside a thunderstorm.
The cool thing about hailstones is they give you a story of what's going on in the thunderstorm and what kind of path that it's traveled.
The stronger the storm, the bigger the hailstone. Hail can reach the size of baseballs and even larger. Every year in the U.S., hail causes nearly $1 billion of damage to property and crops.
When I go out and I do storm chasing type missions, usually the idea is to stay out of the hail because hail can, first of all, destroy windshields and cars. A lot of the bigger hail, I mean, that could break your arm. It's falling at 80 or so miles per hour.
These brain hail weigh about a pound and fell at about 100 miles an hour. But normally, large hailstones are spiky or smooth. Something strange happened in that storm cloud to create this crazy brain shape. The size and shape of hail is decided by how many ice particles or spheres there are within the thundercloud. These particles are cycled around in updrafts within the clouds.
And something like brain hail probably travels through a region of the thunderstorm with a lot of little ice spears. And these ice spears are probably sticking to the main core of the hail. And as it's tumbling, they're getting smoothed out, and eventually it falls out of the thunderstorm.
I've been chasing for like 17 years, and I've never had a day like that day on May 22nd. Whoa! Nothing that I've seen has come close.
Kurt's close encounter with brain hail reminds us that we haven't cracked all of nature's secrets yet. Turku, Finland, April 2001. A ghost ship floats above the sea. And in Montana, the Highwood Mountains morph and grow. From upside-down islands, oceans in the desert, and flying ships. Is it a glitch in the Matrix or a parallel universe? No, it's caused by weather, combining to make a trick of the light called a mirage. If you've ever driven down a road on a hot day, you'll have seen the same thing. Professor Peter Beiersdorf from San Jose State University studies strange light phenomena.
We see mirages on hot days when there's flat surfaces that are heated up by the sun, heating the air above them. Because what happens is hot air allows light to travel faster through it.
Normally, light travels in a straight line to your eye. So when you're looking at an object like a car, the light comes directly towards you. But if there is a layer of warm air near the ground, some of the light travels faster through this layer and gets bent up into your eyes.